Okay, I think it's close to the 10 after point here. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Okay. Probably some people will file in the next couple minutes as well. Before you guys leave. So we're particularly lucky today because not only is Sheryl Steinruck speaking with us, we also have Anna Cook, who is going to be presenting later on in the semester. And she's just bringing some energy as well, some synergy to this talk, to ask questions and bring them for Sheryl. So I'll introduce Sheryl right now. Sheryl Steinruck is a citizen of the Tolowa Dee-ni Nation, formerly known as the Smith River Rancheria. She's from the village of Nee-dash, located along the Smith River in northwestern California. The ancestral homeland of the Tolowa Dee-ni Nation expands from the Sixes River in western Oregon to Wilson Creek in western California, to the Applegate River watershed in southern Oregon. The peoples of the Tolowa Dee-ni Nation suffered the second largest recorded massacre following the Pequot Massacre of 1639. Their massacre on the west coast, the village of taa-k'vt, the center of their world creation during a 10-night Nee-dash ceremony in 1853. Steinruck is the second daughter of the four siblings born to progressively minded parents, James and Eunice Bommelyn, on January 25th, 1954. She conducted linguistics study at the University of Oregon, the Northwest Indian Language Institute, and taught in various other locations. She's currently the Director of Education in the Tolowa Dee-ni Nation. And since I just read the introduction in terms of the center of the world being relative, I'd like to correct myself on that and think about it as something that we can see today as the center of the world with a T. So Sheryl, perhaps you can start by introducing yourself in your own words, add a little bit to that, and tell us a little bit about what you're going to be sharing and why it's meaningful to you as well.
Delaha, Shihu, Shi, Sudachu, Steinruck. Hello, my name is Sheryl Steinruck. As Alan said, I wanted to give a little shout out to Alan. We've known each other for about 10 years now or so. We got to meet in Eugene at the University of Oregon when I was there studying to get my master's degree in linguistics to teach the Tolowa Dee-ni Nation, our Tolowa language here in Delaware and Curry counties. The capital of our tribe is here where I am now on the reservation at Hawanquat, and we have approximately, I think, 1,900 members now, and we are of the same family language as Navajo, Apache, Tlingit, of the Dene language family. Hoopa is also our cousin. And so linguistically, we share a lot that way. And that's one of the things I was looking at studying when I went to the University of Oregon to, to learn how to teach Tolowa. Except the problem was when I got up there, it was basically how to teach English. A lot of people came from all over the world who are second English language learners and were coming to America to learn how to teach English in their homelands. So it was very opposite of what I needed. I needed to go in and learn how to, my first language is English. The federal government is very successful in its assimilation and acculturation of us as a people here. Our language was taken from us, our religion was taken from us, our way of life was removed from us. Like in the introduction, here in Delaware and Curry counties, our whole Aboriginal territory, there were probably over 10,000 of us. In 1853, we suffered the second largest massacre in United States history. It's been well documented. You can look at Mattingly's book to see that and other detailed also information out there. At the turn of the century, because we didn't see any non-Indians until 1820, which is relatively late. And a name for a white man is called Mite, Nashmi is a knife. And Nashminte is one who carries or brandishes a knife. When Jedediah Smith came through here in 1820, he and his trapper fellas, mappers and guys who were trying to find where the best way to come into this territory would be, carried the Jim Bowie knives on their thighs. And having us not having metal, it was quite attractive to us. I mean, what was that? So not me. And so that's our name for white man, is the one who has a knife. And for us, we lived a rather more egalitarian society here. We were run by yash'i, which are districts where there were major capitals where a headman would live with his family, and that yash'i would be a geographic area location that would then take care of that whole region, whatever it might be. There were areas of ownership along the ocean, areas of ownership along the rivers. You would have to have permission to fish at a certain hole. Very ceremonial in terms of the first salmon rights. A lot of these things that happened historically were wiped out. At the turn of the century, there was only 121 of us listed on the census rolls here in Delaware County. We were nearly diminished and wiped off the face of the earth. One of the things I tell people is that when the non-Indians came over from Western Europe and hit the eastern seaboard, they had conflict over time, as we know. As they moved across the United States, the continental United States, by the time they got to the Pacific Ocean, they knew how to take care of us here along the coast. They came in, wiped us out. The survivors were then herded up and taken to reservations that had been established in the 1850s here, 1860s. We were driven, we had our own trail of tears here. We were driven to Umatilla, Grand Round, Siletz, Gaston, Fort Gaston, and Hoopa. We were just separated and taken other places. And the one story that I have been raised with was how we survived, where I come from, at Neely Chundan, foot of the Ripple place, is that my people went up into the mountains and lived with the little people. And they lived up there for 3 years. And they would send a runner down every year to see if it was safe to come home. And so when it came time for them to be able to come back, because this whole area was ablaze, all the villages were burned to the ground, people were just wiped out. The gold rush came in and they just made short order of us. And so when it was safe to come home, then they came back, and then one of my aunts stayed there in the mountains and lived with them. And consequently, I was born to very progressively minded parents. My dad and mom grew up during the Great Depression days. We were very conservative. We were very frugal. We were taught how to grow a garden. We had our own cows. We had everything we needed to sustain ourselves. And I was a carryover from our grandmother. Our whole lives, we've been putting food by, storing things, gathering things. We worked all the time to get that food stored ready for the winter, because here in this part of the world, when we used to have redwood trees before they clear cut them for capitalism, you lived in the forest and went clear from the mountains into the oceans. But we also didn't have the forest fires we have now. Why is that? Well, we had controlled burns. We had places where grasslands were opened up for the elk and the deer and everything to do. We had controlled burns for basket materials and things that we needed. So there was a horticulture that took place here in our systems of the ecosystems of the land. And of course, all that was wiped out with our people. And then we have the great manifest destiny coming across that then took over the land. Here in Delaware County, I was about 16 years old. This picture behind me is taken in 1962, and I'm 12 years old in this picture. And my mom, who got together with her nieces and nephews and sisters and said, we better get these kids together. There was a whole bunch of us born during the baby boomer era, after the war. And we are all running around there not knowing a thing. And she said, we better get these kids together so that we can teach them something, because if we don't teach them, how are they going to know? You have to be taught. It's not something that just falls into your brain. You have to seek it out, or you have to have a desire to have your children learn those things. So every Saturday we got together at a place called Guschu Hall here in Howunquit. And every Saturday, with all the elders that were alive at that time, we would come together and they would teach us how to sing, how to dance, the stories, all the things that were passed on. Our language revitalization started then. And so right there in that picture, I'm the one who's the one in the back, the second from the end. And then my sister's next to her. Then I could name all those people, but they're mostly deceased now. They're gone on through the spirit world. And Amelia Brown is sitting there, and she lived to be 110. And so a lot of the elders that we had that came together at that time, Dee-ni was their first language. When we were going through our language revitalization throughout the decades here, one time we were sitting in a meeting and my mom said, you know, I never thought we'd get like this. And we said, what do you mean, Mom? She said, I never thought we'd be sitting here someday trying to figure out how to teach our kids to speak our language. She said, when, when I was a kid, everybody spoke our language. Everybody talked Indian, she said. How come they never taught their kids? How come we're just one sitting here now trying to figure out how to record our language, what we're going to do with it, you know? Well, that was a proverbial question in my mind over the years. So throughout my educational process, I've come to some conclusions about that, how that happened, why it's that way. And so consequently, that drive to know that information is what's pushed me to kind of get the knowledge I have now. So that I can, when I talk to people like you young people sitting there in that audience, wondering what you're going to do with your life. You know, we've always been taught, learn, teach. And when you teach, you get a second chance to learn it. And that as we grow, y'all might be thinking about having children or not. But the moment you become a parent, you're a teacher. And so it's our responsibility then to know what we can. When we sat around in these groups, Sam Lopez, one of the old elders at that time, he always said, there's women's work and there's men's work. He said, you learn those, but one of the things that women have to do is learn it all. Because when a time comes, like me, I'm an old woman now, I'm an old grandma, the time comes when no one can teach someone, then I have to come and teach them. If my grandson doesn't know how to sing, if we don't have a man coming in to sing for him or teach him how to do these things, then I teach him. But that's the one time it's okay for me to teach men stuff, because then that's when the knowledge is passed on to the next generation. And that's the critical part. And even now, as the director of the education department, my focus is that we teach the young. The whole idea is to pass that baton on to the next generation, whatever that is. Provide the opportunities for them to learn of these things, that they may have understanding of who they are and their identity. And for me, I believe in diversity. There's absolutely nothing wrong with learning another culture, another language. We have the brain capacity and the heart capacity to do it. It's just a matter if we want to or not. When we learn more things, it doesn't, doesn't mean we change who we are. It just rounds us out. We become more understanding of other peoples and other cultures and other lifestyles. You know, I really had a hard time with the Holocaust when I was growing up. I was about 16 years old when I found out what really happened to our people here. And I was very angry, very angry. And it was during the American Indian movement time and our social revolution, I call it, with the civil rights movement. And I became very angry at white people. I just focused on white people. And my parents were the kind of parents that sat us down at the dinner table every night. And the first question they asked us was, what did you learn today? And depending upon that conversation topic, our dinner could last 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the conversation. So I was carrying this hatred around in my heart, just hating white people. So one day my dad says, he goes, Cheryl, we'll have one more talk about this. Of course, I'm a 16-year-old snot-nosed teenager. I don't want to listen to my parents. They're stupid, right? And so he said, I want to have a conversation with you. And he said, now, you have every right to hate white people. What they did to your people was wrong. To come in and wipe you out, kill you, do all those things to you, he said, is wrong. I give it to you. He said, but you have to look at the human side of this. Hatred is a human emotion that all humans carry. He said, if you don't get that hatred in your heart under control, you're going to be just one angry person going around here getting in trouble. You're going to pick fights. You're going to be drunk. You're going to be whatever. He said, where are you going to end up? Probably in prison or dead, because that hatred will eat you alive. It will just make you become this person you don't want to be. And of course, I didn't really want to listen to him. You know, no, Dad, don't worry about it. Yeah, I'll figure it out. He goes, okay, you think about it. You think about what kind of person you want to be, because he said, let's take it one step further. He goes, you say you're a full blood, because I'd say I was a full-blooded Indian. And my rationale was that other race people don't have to admit they're any white blood. We're the only race of people in the whole world that has to prove we're Indian. You have to be on a roll. You have to be in a reservation. You have to have all these parameters that show you who you are as a person. Where other races, you can go through life your whole life and not have to say who you are, who your ancestry is, or anything. So I said, well, I'm full blood. I can just say I'm full blood. He goes, you can't, because we spent our lives talking about family history, where we come from, who we are. He said, you're half Dutch. You see my last name is Steinruck? That's German. My maiden name is Bommelyn, which is Dutch. My ancestors came over through Ellis Island, and when they got to America, they changed their last name. It was Boomlijn over there in Amsterdam. They got here and changed it to Bommelyn. He goes, so you can't deny who your history is. I said, well, I don't have to. I can just say I'm full-blooded. Well, that's being dishonest. He goes, so you need to think about it. Now, he said, when you look at this hatred, let's go one step further on that. You have a right to hate. You know, those white people hated your people, so that's how come they could kill them. Because they had to make them subhuman, right? To kill another human being, you have to get to a frame of mind where they're not human anymore. And so he said, so with you, if you go around here hating white people, you're no different than the white people that killed your people. You're carrying that same emotion in your heart. He goes, you need to think about it. Is that the kind of person you want to be? He said, so I want you to think about it. We'll come back and we'll have a talk. He said, last one. And he said, if you decide that you need to change your ways, then we'll talk about that too. If you decide you want to continue to hate white people, I'll let you do that. So I did. I went, thought about it, prayed about it, thought about it, prayed about it. And we came back together and I said, Dad, you're right. You're right. If I turn around and hate people the way people hated my people, I'm no different. What makes me any better than another killer, right? And so that was a turning point for me when I was 16 years old on determining who I was as a person. And so my dad said then, he goes, it doesn't matter what color your skin is, it doesn't matter what your family history is. He called it a heart condition. What kind of heart do you have? Do you have a good heart or a bad heart? You know, a light heart or a dark heart? And another thing my mom taught us was, in order for you to be a medicine woman or an Indian devil, you have to have the same knowledge. In order for you as a medicine person to cure someone who's been hoodooed, deviled, or made bad medicine on, you have to know the cure for that. So that means you have to know the whole thing. Well, the only difference between those two individuals, and a lot of people in our society actually, is what kind of heart do they have? Do you use your knowledge for good to help people or not? Because our parents taught us to make this world a better place when we leave than when we came. So that when we look at the whole earth and what's going on, like even today, Mother Earth is very sick. We as humans have polluted her to the point that she has to rejuvenate herself. Fires, floods, all these things are normal. It's what happens when you have to heal from within. And this earth has changed many times. It may change from what we know, but it's going to change and still be here. Because how many billions of years has the earth existed? And here in the United States of America, how old is this society? Less than 300 years old. When you go back and look at the history of where I come from, we lived there for 10,000 years. So when you compare those things, it's very short as to what American society has done to us and to the world everywhere. I want to get back to the language a little bit. In that, here in our part of the world, we didn't have boarding schools, but we had the one-room schoolhouse. The one-room schoolhouse had the same effect as boarding schools. My mom and her family grew up at Neely Chundon. When they went to school, it was only 3 miles away. But when they went there, they were beaten. If they spoke their language, if they did anything at all about our culture, they were beaten. And so it was the same thing. Even though it wasn't sent off to a boarding school, it is similar because the net effect is the same. So anytime you try to rob someone and take away their identity, you're going to have problems, you know? And so when we look at the residual effects of trauma, that's what we suffer from a lot these days, even in every level of our society. So what I've been spending my life doing is trying to find a way to heal that. And so being the director of the education department here at TDN, Tolowa Dee-ni Nation, we are over 3 divisions. We have the Head Start, we have youth services, and we have language and culture. And what my goal is that we become stewards of this earth, and however we do to put together those curriculums to teach the young. It's all to teach the young. Everything we do is to teach the young. And Mom said is when kids are born, you watch them. You see what they want to do, what their likes and dislikes are. And what they like, you encourage it because you want them to be happy in what they're doing. And that's what we're still doing to this day. What do you want to learn? What do you want to know? What kind of problems do you want to tackle as a grown-up? What do you think where can you be of best service? It's a whole thing about serving one another. And so as we go through life, if we do those things, then we'll find happiness. So, you know, I'm a real philosopher, how do you say that word? And can rattle on and rattle on. So I was hoping that with a little bit of background I've given you, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask me.
Yeah, I want to just say thank you, by the way. I think that was a beautiful treatise, not only on landscape, but also on life. And I think the two are intimately connected. I do want to ask if anyone has a question before building space plan.
Curious who the little people are.
You might have to.
I'm curious about the little people you referenced that where you took refuge in the mountains.
Well, you know, one thing I found, our grandson's family is from Hawaii. And we got to go over there one time when he was 6. He's 20 now. And I like hanging out with the indigenous people. I didn't go to Waikiki. I could care less. I went to Nanakuli, which is the homestead where his family comes from, and sat around and visited with those folks over there. And we were comparing story. And it's kind of interesting when you get around even other tribal people or, you know, other tribes, we have similar stories about things like the little people or giants or serpents or different things in our culture and our society. And one thing about us and the little people is that the one thing I can equate it to with non-Indian folks is kind of like the leprechaun to a certain extent, in that they're small. And we have a spot here where we dry our fish. It's called Yagini-o. And it's brain in English. Hole in the ground. Sorry. hole in the ground, and where it is, the natural fissure that goes up into the shoreline there, and there's a creek that runs through there with fresh water. Well, in that creek, you can go up, and you used to be able to follow it up to the big rock there, and that's where the little people lived. It was like an inside cave area with water systems and everything inside of there. And so when we would camp down at the beach, you could see little footprints along that. And we were always taught to have total respect for any other being, any other being that wasn't quote human, but because everything has a spirit, everything lives. And so when the Westbrooks came in, the English colonizers came in and took over all the land, one of the things that they did was blow up that big rock. And they used the rock to build a jetty in Crescent City for the harbor. And I was 10 years old when that happened. And they never told you back in the day when they're going to blow something up or do anything, they just did it. Well, a big piece of rock hit me in the leg. The place is probably a mile and a half away, and then I got hit with this rock and got a cut in my leg. But they destroyed that rock and they used it for another purpose. Well, it destroyed the little people's home. And so they get displaced, they live other places. And one thing I've learned about little people, just personally myself, is that they're mischievous. Like they might inhabit a place where you are, and then there'll be like happenings where they might throw your papers on the floor. People think I'm crazy when I tell you these stories, but they're true. And what we did was we made a truce with them. You know, it's okay, we have to live here together. Let's get along and share. And so consequently, I've not had problems really with them lately. But the little people do exist. And back in the day when my ancestors went up in the mountains, there were, like I said, there was a lot of redwood forests back in the day, and there was all kinds of trails and stuff. Like now, if you were to follow the routes and systems that come into our area now, everywhere there was a trail, that's where a highway is now, because that's how we traversed back and forth all over, because we lived in a trading system, a bartering system. So if you needed something, you would trade with a sister tribe or a sister village to get what you needed for your sustainability of your lifestyle and your home. So the little people primarily lived in the mountains, or they lived, like to say, in that one big rock there. But they still exist to this day. We even have he's called Yah-hush-chu, which is Yah means distant, Hush is Indian, an Indian person, and Chu is big. So we have a big person like Bigfoot, they call him nowadays. But in our notion, Bigfoot is a protector that lives in the mountains. It's not something evil and wicked you need to kill or whatever they do want to do. But yeah, it's just to live in harmony because everything has a spirit.
So I have a follow-up question on this. It's interesting that you mentioned, well, a lot of differences between the kind of care and system and culture that has existed in the place for a really long time, 10,000 years as you described, versus this kind of like almost blip of extremely destructive history associated with, as you describe it, the knife people, white people, right? And I think that the colonizing, exploitative, you've also said capitalist destruction, the redwoods, and so on. If you were to compare, you know, for example, even when you just described the small paths that are quite old, and then their replacement with the highway, there's clearly some differences going on a very tangible level. And I'm wondering, you know, as Indian people today, or as even the caretakers of the older ways into the present and the future, how can we try to, I don't know, heal a little bit of that in the context of just, you know, those highways are rebuilt every year. You know what I mean? This rapacious.
Well, you know, the one thing I say, Alan, to all that is how I marvel Indian folk and probably most people, indigenous people, is that we're adaptable. The misnomer that we're stupid, lazy, do nothing is just lies. When you look at how indigenous people have to live and maintaining their food source, their living arrangements, it's all work. You talk about having a work ethic. In our culture, historically, if you didn't work, you starved, or you became a slave for someone who had the food you needed. You either got off your butt or you died, basically. I mean, you had to work. And so the whole notion of being able to prepare things came from that effort all the time. But we adapted. We were able to, even though our religion was taken from us, our dance stuff that's standing behind me there, that was confiscated in 1906. We were not allowed to practice our ceremonies until later. We didn't even get membership to this country until 1924. And the Indians and the civil rights didn't even include Indians. It was primarily for Black people. So we didn't get rights until 1968. In 1972, when our religion was then recognized. So we have a very hard relationship with the federal government. There has been laws that have been established that most people don't even know anything about how to regulate us. You see these tattoos on my chin? That's called a 111. Here in northwestern California and northern Oregon, southern Oregon and northwestern California, the 4 tribes that are here, Tolowa, Hupa, Yurok, and Karuk, all the women got 111. Sam Lopez taught us when I was young that all girls got it, no matter what your station was in life. And that about 1920, they outlawed tattooing in the state of California because all tribes tattooed. Some did parts of their body, whatever. Here we just have the women do 111, and the men only got marks on their arms to measure. They were the banker. They're the ones that determine the value of dentellium or necklaces or whatever for commerce reasons. And so my point being is that we're adaptable. So consequently on this story we hear my 111, when I was a kid growing up, the only women who had 111 were old. They were born in the late 1800s or before 1920 when the law went into effect. So my grandmother and her sisters didn't have it done. My mom and her sisters never had it done. But I grew up around this my whole life. If you see in that picture, we all have 111 painted on our chin. That was part of our ceremony. And I told my brother that I was going to get my 111 when I became a grandmother. Oh, I think I'll get it when my grandma. So when our grandson was born, my brother came to me and said, well, you said you was going to get your 111 when you was a grandma. And I wasn't ready to have my face tattooed. It's a big deal when you tattoo your face. And to me it is. And back when I was a kid growing up, the only ones who tattooed were criminals, people who had been in jail, or sailors, or people in the Navy, basically, you know. Well, nowadays everybody does. Well, I just wasn't ready in 2002. So then finally the Spirit moved me in 2006 because my mom and dad always taught us learn, teach, and I had been learning the language. I'd been doing things all my whole life. And so then I decided to go ahead and get my 111. And the only person I talked to was my mom. And she was 79 at the time. I said, hey, Mom, I think I'll get my 111. And she goes, oh, you're stupid. Now I laughed. I said, well, even if you think I shouldn't, I'm still going to do it. So I hooked up with a Native woman, a Yurok woman, and she did it for me. I gave her a case of fish, you know, salmon and smelt and stuff we have. And for me, it's an outward expression of my dedication to my language, my heritage, and my culture. That's what it means to me. And I'm the first woman here in Tolowa Dee-ni Nation to have it done in contemporary times. And that was October of 06. And I forget it's there, but my point is being of adaptability. I think that we have a capacity in our mind and heart to figure out what we need to do next. Another example of that, and it's hard for me to rattle on, but what just recently I found out, I went to a Meet the Candidates forum because I'm an activist, been an activist my entire life. So I got to find out what's going on politically and everything else in our community. So I was going to meet the candidates who were running for election for school board and board of supervisors. And I found out from one of the men there that they're planning to put these offshore windmills out here because we have a lot of wind off the shore. So 25 miles, this is supposed to happen in 4 to 7 years. That's not very long when you're 68 years old. So they're going to put these wind turbines in 25 miles out off the shore, 1 mile apart, but 100 of them. And then they're going to have them so that there's, kind of checkerboarded, like they'll fill it in with 3 rows. So, I am very concerned about this. We have wind for a reason. The wind, I'm not that I like wind, but the only way I tolerate it is that it churns up the ocean, the bottom of the ocean, and the creel comes up and it feeds our fish, all of our coastline. We dry smelt every year. And some years we did not have any smelt run for 5 years. My little grandson was 5 years old before he saw how we fish because there was no fish to fish. So we have done research to try to find out what's happened to our environment, the ecosystems that supports these things. So I'm concerned about wind turbines coming in off the coast. I'm concerned about what they do with the animals, the birds that fly, the whales and everything else that's going to go on out there, as well as the natural cycle of the currents of the water with the wind. And how are they going to get this energy to shore? What's the conduit to pull this to shore? Where is this energy going to go? Do you think we're going to be able to have it? Here in the state of California in 2024, everything has to be electric. There's not supposed to be any more small gas motor vehicles, lawnmowers, chainsaws, all those things are supposed to use electric. So we're going to have to rewire our houses to charge our cars, to charge our electrical things. And to me, a lot of times when we look at these things, we're making more problems if we try to solve problems in that. Where's those minerals going to come from to build those batteries? Where does that come from? Where does that mining happen? Right now we have a case before the Supreme Court of the United States of America called Bracking versus Holland. It has to do with the Indian Child Welfare Act, which is about child custody matters. The Indian Child Welfare Act was made in 1990, I believe it was, to protect Indian children from being adopted out to non-Indian families, that they're to look to the tribal members, the family members first before these children are adopted out carte blanche. Well, right now, this case has gone clear to the Supreme Court for them to decide if the Indian Child Welfare Act is racist, if it's based on race, or it's a political thing. Now, if they determine, this conservative court we have now, determines that it's race-based, then it's illegal. So it'll then diminish our rights as sovereign people because tribes are political entities. The reason why we exist is because of the plenary power of the federal government through Congress to determine our identity, our sovereignty as Indian tribes. It's the fiduciary relationship they have with us since colonization started in the beginning of this country. So people don't realize that impact on us. How is that going to impact our sovereign rights within Indian lands, within tribal governments? And a lot of tribes don't even know this is going on. A lot of these things happen without people even being aware, and yet it will impact us. Because right here in the state of California, well, actually not just state of California, across the nation, during the Eisenhower era, they tried termination. They said, y'all want to be white people, we'll help you be white people. You can have the deed to your land. Here in this part of the world, a lot of our people lost their land because they did not know about taxes. They did not know about all the things you have to do to maintain your properties. We don't have ownership like that in traditional ways. And so this holds a foreign knowledge. But my point being, though, to you all, is that as we work together as a team of people, of human beings, we will be able to work together. So why is big oil why are these big companies coming in and wanting to put these highfalutin attorneys on this case, Holland, Brackeen versus Holland, over Indian child welfare? Well, if you look at the bigger picture, where are the uranium fields? Where are the mines? Where is the oil? It's on Indian land. If we are no longer Indians, they can take that land, eminent domain. I mean, there's so many layers of stuff that most people don't recognize that Indian folks have to live under. And a lot of times tribal members don't even know.
Yeah, you know,
Because we just live in our society and go through the motions. But a lot of times we don't even understand the implications of some of this stuff or how it came to be. And for me, my personal thing is I always am an activist because I say, number one, know your rights. Number two, exercise your rights. Number three, protect your rights. Because number four, someone's always ready to take them away from you. So I teach my children, my grandchildren, anyone that'll listen to me about that. And part of it is because if we don't protect ourselves, we leave ourselves vulnerable. And I don't want to be the kind of old lady that's sitting there saying, well, Auntie, how come you didn't do something when you could? Grandma, how come you didn't do something when you needed to do something? You just let it happen to us. I don't want those words coming to me. So that's why I try to keep myself alert with what's going on and learn, teach it. It makes me be a learner too, because many times I have to learn stuff I don't know about. I have to understand those things I don't know and then help other ways to see how we fit the puzzle pieces together. But I always go back to the fact that it's teamwork. We can only do it. We're not islands. We don't live on an island. We have to not operate in a vacuum. We have to open up. And that's why I like what Alan's doing right now with this project. Because if you all sitting in there are taking heed and heart to what some of the folks are going to be talking to you about, you will know some things by the end of this 12-week course or whatever it is you're doing. And, you know, going to college, I always say, not everyone's cut out for college. What it does, it won't teach you how to do a job, but it'll help you get a job. When you graduate, you'll have that little piece of paper and it'll help you get a job. But once you get in the trenches, that's when you really learn what you need to know. And you will learn as you need to know something. If you need to know something, learn it. If it's in your heart to learn it, learn it. Because if you leave it to someone else, it may not happen. So that's a responsibility we have, I think, as humans, to look out for each other, on protecting each other and what we do as a group of people to keep us happy, healthy, and a long life.
I just
don't know
wanted
if that answered you at all. I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to kind of underline a couple of things you just said, because I think you just shared so many key points, which we're going to need to look at over and over again in this class, and hopefully in the design school as a whole, we'll be able to return to them. But obviously, one of the things that you just mentioned is how the courts play with the way citizenship rights, politics, and race fold together in the United States, and how much also corporations play a role in trying to undermine a lot of the established political rights of people, sometimes in the case of you just suggested, sometimes biracializing them to actually undermine the political and sovereign rights associated with a lot of these things. So that was just one point that I think like you could give a whole other lecture on in more detail. And then in terms of the, green energy, this switch, oh yeah, it seems really positive. Make the switch from petroleum, to green energy, when it's actually perhaps just more of the same, and could potentially even undermine a lot of the landscape, a lot of the foods, a lot of those reciprocal relationships that you brought up. That's another lecture you could give. That could be a whole design school studio to address something like windmill construction off the coast of Northern California, for example. So I just wanted to underline some of the things that you said.
Well, the one last thing I'll say about, and then I'll be quiet. Okay, so here in northwestern California, we had lots and lots of redwood trees. And I don't know how many of you have studied redwood trees before. Our creation story starts with a white redwood tree. So it's very sacred to us. Our canoes that we have are very sacred to us. Because of that symbolism of what redwood is for us. Well, when the big mills came in, because a lot of people came over here to America thinking, boy, the land of plenty, it's never going to end. Man, there's so much here. Elk, you can kill them. Fish, you can kill them. They'll always come back. Well, guess what? Things are going extinct. So here in our area, the logging companies came in, clear cut. It's horrible. It's terrible. Look, the only reason why we have redwood trees today, and this is to fight capitalism, is the park system. So what happened is when they came in and clear cut all these places, they didn't replant back. They didn't take care of the soil. Where did they go? They went to Brazil. Companies right here, Westlog, went to Brazil and started tearing down the rainforest. So here they are coming here to this part of the world, destroying us, then going down there to destroy the Aboriginal people, the indigenous people down there. All for what? Money. Capitalism, free enterprise. See how much money you can make at the expense of who gives a damn, right? As long as I can laugh my way to the bank, hey, doesn't matter to me. But for us, when you look at how sacred things are, how important oxygen is, how we need to look at the world, because a redwood tree produces more oxygen than people imagine. The way their needles are designed, they absorb the fog, the moisture that then keeps us, so it's like the lungs, just like in the Amazon. There's what keeps our earth balanced. And yet we can go in and cut down all this stuff in the name of the almighty dollar. And here we are suffering again all over with climate change and all the things that happened because we as stewards lost the way. We allowed corporate to come in and take over. If we followed the rules of the antitrust laws that were done away with during the Clinton administration, that allows corporate to come in now and do all these buybacks and all this stuff through the stock market. It's all tied together for basically greed and capitalism. It's all in the name of money. At what expense? Human expense, animal expense, land expense. And so for me, a lot of times we lose our way here in the United States of America, thinking of what we want to do as American. Well, what is that to be American? What is that? When I see people that come over from other countries into this country, they give up their language, their culture, their traditions, they become American. Why? And that's from my perspective, because I know what the American society has done to us, but we're still here. We're adapting. We're figuring out a way to exist and to teach and coexist. I love that word, coexist, because that gives us respect for all those around us in an equal way as humans. And so for me, I appreciate you young people sitting out there listening a little bit if you're not sleeping, to go ahead and try to do more to what you can do as a kid going through life. Decide what kind of parent you want to be. One of the questions my mom asked me, I'll ask you. What kind of older generation do you want to be? You want to be someone that knows something? Or you want to be someone who just goes by the seat of your pants, whatever you do, hey, however the wind blows, you're going to be there? Or are you going to be someone that helps with what needs to be done? And so, I never really wanted to think about getting old. You think you're going to be young forever. But when you look at our birth date, where's my fingers? Okay, here's your birth date and your death date. But really what matters is in between here. It doesn't matter when you're born or when you die. It's what you did with your life while you're alive. So for me, it's like, you go to the cemetery, look at all these names of these people that went on before us. And I often wonder that middle part, what did they do? How did they impact us to make this world a better place? And I hope it's for the good. I'm an eternal optimist.
Well, I want to thank you very much. We're actually out of time, and thank you.
Sorry, Anna.
Yeah, Anna, when you come on, you'll have to share your thoughts also on this.
I'll join you on yours, okay?
So thank you very much again, Cheryl, for coming.
You guys are so welcome. Have a good day. Good luck. Have fun. Enjoy life.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Ashtu.
Thank you.
See you, Alan.